Good morning. 605 Speaks. Coming to you live from South Dakota because this weekend was Snow Jam Comedy Festival and Boss's Pizza and Chicken and Tea was one of the sponsors and great venues. And as anybody can see, if you can get a place to stay near where you're going for entertainment, that's much better than driving home on South Dakota roads this winter. We have a lot of snow, a lot of no-go, a lot of ice. So I stayed put last night after that event. Also did a lot of other events last night. I kind of made a circuit of fun stuff and I got to talk to a lot of people that I haven't seen since pre-pandemic. And that's what I'm doing today with this recording. I'm talking to somebody that I don't think I've seen in person since pre-pandemic. So I'm really glad to get her on to kind of chat with me about her life. She is what I would call a multiple county South Dakotan because she has lived in South Dakota, but where she lives now is not where she grew up and not where a lot of her family is. So she goes back and forth. And also, she's more well traveled. She's a better South Dakota tourist than I am. I think she's been to more parts of South Dakota than I have. So I am excited to bring on today. Hello, Carmen Toft.
Hello, how are you?
Good. And you're always like the manic pixie dream girl in my life. You've always got the cute hair and the cute glasses. I always love it.
Yes, the cute glasses arrived right around when I turned 40. So now I believe they're here to stay.
There you go. I know I've when I hit what do they call it? A woman of a certain age status, and I'm like, oh my God, I can Iris. I can Iris Apfel. I don't know if you know who she is. If you don't, you should Google her, but I can wear weird glasses, weird clothes, weird whatever I want, and people will just think it's quirky.
Yes.
So
Yes, the next I believe is my crone phase. So I'm looking forward.
I'm in a crone phase. I'm so
I'm looking forward
excited.
to that. Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. You can
When
say and do things that you should have been able to say and do all along,
Mhm.
but now people are just like, whatevs.
No. Oh, there she goes again.
Right. Or they get really afraid when they say whatevs and then I say, give me a piece of your hair. So yeah, like
Just start throwing herbs at people and you're like, oh,
exactly.
then walk away.
Exactly. Is she making a pizza or is she cursing me? I
You
don't know
don't
what's
know.
happening.
Hmm.
Yeah. So we have you're one of my friends that I consider the original met on the internet before meeting people on the internet was safe and cool. It
Yeah.
has to have been at least 15 years because that's how long I've been on Twitter.
Yes.
I
Yes.
stumbled across a picture of you and me and Stacy Fisher at the first Sioux Falls tweet up.
I bring up the tweet ups every so often. I was like, what a wild thing that we did. Like
Yes,
we everyone locally on Twitter, and then we put our little Twitter handles on our name tags.
exactly.
So
And
wild.
then when we got there was very few women and a bunch of tech guys who didn't know what to do with any woman showing up. They were like, "There's girls here,"
It was just
you know.
oh, those were the days.
Yeah, yeah,
And then we all followed each other in our different accounts. And
right.
tell you what,
I never did Foursquare because I remember thinking that's how one of us gets murdered. Is for
I actually am one of the few people still on Foursquare. I think me, Brienne Maynor, and Shane Daly are the only people on my Foursquare. But it's such a treasure trove of information. Like it's just the where did you go? What were you doing there? Why was I at the Holiday Inn 8 years ago? It's so, and it's only interesting to me.
right.
But so I'm still out there holding on to Foursquare.
It's a good digital journal to look
It
back.
is the total that's exactly it.
That now that I'm have had to have older adults in my life pass away and I've dug out their old journals and I've read them and then I thought, oh, they never wanted anyone to see these words. No one will see mine because the apps have failed and outdated.
Right.
And I didn't archive anything.
No.
Be like
I
my MySpace past is gone.
I would love to see my MySpace again though. I just feel like that also was such a great app for the time. Desktop app.
Yeah. it was so much, we were so much more creative than we were on Facebook. You could make, I had a lot of glitter headlines, and that has remained true 2 decades later. I still live my life. Like, people would meet me and they would be like, "You're a real life glitter headline." And I'm like, "Yeah." And I still
Yeah.
am. I'm like, everybody should be sparkly. And Britney Spears all the way. So I don't know. Yeah. Well, and we have both since then had digital lives that have moved on. We've both done podcasts. We've both done
Yeah.
vlogcasts. We've both used our social media for advocacy for different things.
Mhm.
Um, and but your life didn't start out that way. I always think of you as the girl from the north.
The North.
The north.
Yes.
Because, to me, Del Rapids is the north.
Fair. And I am. Yeah. Whenever someone's like, "Oh, where are you from?" And I was like, "Well, now, I mean, I've been in this house 15 years. I've been in Sioux Falls just a little over that, but yeah, grew up in Dual County.
And
License plate 23.
was it hard to give that up?
It what? Honestly, the 23 plate wasn't. I didn't have such an emotional connection to. It was my Brookings license plate.
Oh,
That was the one that I was like, what if I would go up there? Would they give me a number 6 license plate again? And the answer was no. But
because
6DC 616. Why do I still remember that? Could I tell you what mine is outside in my driveway right now? Maybe if I thought about it. That was a good license plate.
So Dual County, what do you think if someone's watching this, South Dakota or otherwise, and they're like, Dual County, what the heck is in Dual County? What do you think Dual County would be considered most commonly famous for, most well known for?
Gary dances. There is an American Legion Hall in Gary, and when you talk to people of a certain age, it's the Gary dances that most Johnny Holmes would play Gary. They do huge street dances on the 3rd of July. Gary has a rodeo. Clear Lake also has a rodeo, which is Crystal Springs Rodeo.
Right.
A lot of people will recognize that. Clear Lake
Exactly.
is the county seat, so some people will know Clear Lake because you kind of got to drive through it on a couple different highways, but
Exactly.
definitely Gary dances. So I'm technically from Gary. We're in rural Gary, grew up in the
Right.
country. So I had a rural Route 1 address until well after high school, whenever they switched to the 911
To
addresses.
the fire numbers.
Yep.
Yeah, that's like when my brother moved out to the farm, the family farm, and was like, he was like, "I don't know the fire number out here. Like, if there's an emergency." And I said, "Well, if you just say it's Marv's farm south of town,
Mhm.
the volunteer ambulance person are going to be like, 'Oh, I know where you are.'" So that's, yeah,
Yeah,
that's
we had next to the phone, we had directions like from Gary and from Clear Lake. Like you're going to go 8 miles on this and 2 miles on this. And, then I was on gravel. But that was if you ever had to call an ambulance, you had to know like how to tell them to get there.
right. Right. Do you feel like people are surprised to think of that area of South Dakota as rodeo, as opposed to farther west being rodeo?
I don't know. I feel like if you're from South Dakota, I think there are just rodeos everywhere.
Exactly.
But I guess rodeos don't generally come up. So when Jenny said I'm well traveled, so right after college, I got a job with a traveling children's musical theater show. So I traveled with Bear in the Big Blue House, and then very briefly with Dragon Tales. And so I went 13.
Totally booking you for SuperCon now. Okay, go ahead.
I was a tour manager. I was not a character. I can hold a clipboard amazingly. But I did like 13 countries and 45 states. And so that's when you would end up talking to people who had never been to South Dakota. Like everywhere I went, they're like, I've never seen a South Dakota driver's license before. And I was like, it's a special day for us both. Like, may I
Yeah,
please enter your establishment? So that's sometimes where you ended up like talking about rodeos and the American Indian population and the reservations in South Dakota. And then like trying to explain where you're from. And like South Dakota was just like,
blank slate
oh,
to other people.
right, exactly. So there was no like, I'm from this part of,
Mhm.
the state. You're just like, I'm from South Dakota.
Yeah.
But I did grow up right on the Minnesota border. So there are softball fields in Gary, and then there used to be like a teeny tiny shack right across the street where they sold ice cream, like hard scoop, like good ice cream, and that was technically in Minnesota. So you could be like, "Hey, mom, I'm going to Minnesota for ice cream," and then like
Crossing the border.
you'd confidently walk across this tiny road, and then you'd go get your ice cream in Minnesota.
Yeah, that's my college roommate was from Gary, Minnesota.
Mm.
And I was very confused for a while because she would always say the town and her zip code. So that she would say I'm from Gary, Minnesota, and then rattle off, or I'm from Gary and then rattle off the zip code, because then people up in Brookings would go like, "What? That's not one of ours." And so then she could explain that she was from Minnesota. So
That happened a lot. Friends with Madison, South Dakota, and Madison, Minnesota. You
yeah,
also have to
yeah,
distinguish quite a bit. I
exactly.
will say now, one of the more interesting things in Gary is it used to be the South Dakota School for the Blind was
Oh,
in Gary for a couple decades. And then
okay.
it when I what?
So are we talking like Laura Ingalls Wilder? Did her sister Mary go there?
Perhaps, perhaps. My
That was
guess is
before.
no, because there would have been a plaque or something
Yeah.
saying that. So I'm gonna guess no, but so I believe currently it's now in Aberdeen, but it was in Gary for a number of years. And then it went when it moved to Aberdeen, then it just sat vacant also for a number of decades. And so when I was growing up, it was just this ruin of a building. Some owners would mow the lawn, some owners would not. So you could always tell when a new ownership happened, and it was right across from the city park. So, and then kids would go in and break in and vandalize it and party there, and because it's a huge campus, right? It's a
Right.
school. It was a residential school, and then because it was school for the blind. There are tunnels underneath it connecting all of the different buildings. So
Oh.
people would, run around in the tunnels, and not me. I was a good kid. Other people I heard
Oh yeah.
did that. And then let's see, 2009 ish, which is a number of years ago at this point, 08, 09. Somebody bought it and then rehabbed it, and Coke Hazard out of Sioux Falls and came, and they were the architects, and there was a lot of money that was put into making it this gorgeous. So now it's the Buffalo Ridge Resort. And
Yeah.
so there's a little boutique hotel down there. There's a bunkhouse. They just added family suites, so they added more accommodations there. There's a campground. They dammed up the Gary Gulch, the crick, as we used to call it. So now they have a Lake Elsie, that used to be there. It wasn't there, and now like that's part. The campground surrounds this little lake, and uh, it is outrageously cool that this gorgeous, gorgeous building, like they were able to bring back a lot of that history. Then they have photographs up from the old school
Oh,
in the hotel, in the
connected.
tunnels. And it's such a cool like community space. My sister had her rehearsal dinner there. I've been to quilt retreats there. My company actually, because the company I work for has an office. Well, I guess we're all remote, but we have a headquarters in Sioux Falls and a headquarters in Bismarck. And so we're always looking for something that's like halfway
Right.
where we can bring everybody together. Gary is not halfway, but it was such a cool space that everyone got to go to my hometown
Oh,
and
very cool.
stay at Buffalo Ridge for a little all staff retreat. So it was great.
And in a winter like we've had this year, where we've had record snowfall and whatnot, I bet the tunnels are real handy.
Right.
I bet the
Like,
staff is like, absolutely, we're gonna run underground.
if you can get there in the first place, yeah, for sure.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And my parents are still there. My parents are still in the same house that I grew up in. And then my sister, her husband is from Canby, Minnesota. And they recently moved to his family homestead.
Oh
It was not
wow.
homestead, but a family house. So they're serious snow movers. They got tractors. They got like you got to be wait to be blown out from your neighbor, and then otherwise you just
Yeah.
sit and wait. Somebody will get you out eventually.
Yeah, my friends that have grown up with either a rural life, whether it be on the farm or just lived on the edge of town, have not freaked out about the snow not getting moved in Sioux Falls. They're just like, whatevs. Call your uncle; he'll bring a tractor.
Be
Like
fine.
I honestly, if I were mayor, I did not get enough write-in votes this last couple times I tried. If I were mayor when this really went down, I would have been like, all right, everybody that has a blade on their truck, which is in Sioux Falls, you can't legally just go start blading your neighborhood. I still would have been like, everybody that has a blade on your truck, we're going to meet in the Empire Mall parking lot, and you guys are going to go and help do just one clear lane down the middle of some residential areas. We're gonna route this out, and we're gonna get this going. And yeah, I didn't get enough write-in votes to do that.
Well, I still think you should maybe call City Hall and just be like, listen, I have some ideas. Let me help you.
I think that my number is blocked. I don't know. I try. I don't get through. I get that new phone. Who dis is what it says. I didn't know you could do that on a landline. So I think they've just trained someone to answer that way.
Like, oh, there it is again.
Yep. So what do you think when other people that you run into from the South Dakota area, if they're describing, somebody from Sioux Falls or Pierre or Rapid City, if they're trying to describe Dual County but they've never lived up there, what are they extremely confident in describing but they're 100% getting it wrong?
Oh. I got nothing. Nothing comes to mind.
Nothing?
That somebody like thinks they know about Dual County and they actually don't.
Yeah, or that region, and they're like, oh yeah, it's like this. The people are like this, or this is what everyone does. I think I would describe it as the only thing to do is go hunting. They just wait until pheasant season.
I mean, we're more deer.
Yeah.
I would say more folks hunt deer than my parents have friends that call it deer hunting, but they just drive around and look at deer and then count them. That they're retired. That's one of their retirement activities is deer hunting, where they're like, we saw 45 deer.
Yeah.
We were just driving around. It's like, okay, that's something.
We got a tag for the Buick this year, just in case.
What?
I also
Yeah.
think that I know that in driving at one point for my work, I had to drive back and forth to Clear Lake a lot, and I was surprised at the amount of deep water up there. I was surprised at the amount of. I do not like the parts of South Dakota where you're on the road and you're driving between two lakes and you have no side, and if the wind blows hard, no one ever knows what happened to you.
Yeah.
Like you're gone and no one ever knows. I was surprised at that when I was up there.
I take the back way. So I take the Toronto exit and then like scooch into Clear Lake on the side. Old 77, couldn't tell you what it actually is.
Yeah.
But then if people like I would have people come visit from college, or I'd have to tell people how to get there, I was like, just take the Clear Lake exit. Like, it's just so much easier. And then you can just come into Clear Lake the other direction. And so a friend of mine was going for a job interview at Dual High School, where that was my school. It's K-12, all in like the same building. The building touches. And I was like, okay, so you're going to go on Main Street and then you're going to turn at the cowboy store. There's this huge cowboy like statue thing on top of the sign. That's where you're going to turn. That's where the school is. So she goes and she like goes up and down 3 times. She cannot find the cowboy store and therefore could not find the school, and finally had to ask. And then she was late for her interview. And so she was talking to the principal and she's like, oh my God, my friend told me how to get here because she used to come here and she told me to turn at the cowboy, and there was no cowboy. And he was like, they literally took that down last week.
Oh,
there's no way. He's like, there's no way she could have known that. I was like, okay. I was like, no, I swear to God, there's a cowboy there.
Yeah, you can't be taking down landmarks. You can't.
So what were they thinking? How were people going to navigate?
Exactly. We don't all have MapQuest.
Well, and I should have talked to my mother was a dental assistant in Clear Lake for over 40 years. So she saw like generations of the same family. And so there are a few people my mom does not know or hasn't met or hasn't taken care of. And she would have absolutely been on top of that, like when the cowboy came down from the cowboy store. And but
Right.
I felt so confident in my directions.
So, and growing up there and being of a creative and theater type mind, where did you think that you would? Did you think you'd spend your whole life in South Dakota, or did you think that you would land at a like as you did a bigger city in South Dakota? Did you ever, or do you ever dream of going back to? Would you ever live full time in Gary again?
No. Mm-mm. That's a little I made a declaration probably 15 years ago when I left Brookings that I could not live anywhere that didn't have pizza or Chinese delivery. Like that was going to be the barest minimum. And I've lived in Minneapolis very briefly. I lived in Brookings a couple years. Sioux Falls is probably about the biggest I'd like to go at this point. I did live in Slidell, Louisiana, which is a pretty similar size to Sioux Falls,
Hmm.
but it's right across Lake Pontchartrain from New Orleans, which obviously was a much bigger city.
Right.
And I have a little too much road rage for the big city.
I have too much
Like,
road rage for Sioux Falls now.
I as the trains, I want to light them on fire. Like
We
I and it has gotten better, but usually I'm because I live on the east side, the trains are always in my way. Whether I want to go to downtown or I want to leave downtown, there's a train in my way. It's very frustrating.
When you compare your living in the bigger setting of Sioux Falls now, that's kind of a good jump off because your first instinct to want to live in a bigger place was amenities. Um,
Mhm, mhm.
and I know a big part of your ongoing career throughout the years I've known you have always had to do with healthcare. What is healthcare access like up there compared to here? I mean, we've got two huge hospital systems, all kinds of clinics, independents, all that. If somebody has a heart attack in the field in Gary, where are they getting lifted to?
Well, Clear Lake has a Sanford clinic, in addition to a hospital and an emergency room. And so for a town that size, very grateful that you still have this, there's a lot of towns that size and a lot smaller that don't have healthcare and don't have the school.
Hmm.
So for Clear Lake to have both, and that's the hospital my sister was born. Um, so the hospital's been there for a while. Um, and so that's really great. And then from there, you can be airlifted to Sioux Falls. Watertown is another close one. There's a couple systems up in Watertown. So, and then Canby. So if you're in Gary, you might actually end up in Canby. There's also a Sanford there. So
Yeah.
that's so healthcare access up there is not bad. My grandparents were outside of Toronto, South Dakota, and because my whole family for a while, well, growing up. So I have an aunt and uncle, a couple cousins, grandparents. We all were in Jewel County, every single one of us. So we had the same number of people at birthday parties, Sunday dinners, and Christmas. It was just everybody was right there.
Right there.
So when I moved to Brookings, that was like, whoa, it's a whole other county.
Right.
But so for my grandparents, like for the rural ambulance to pick them up, and they were able to get to Clear Lake, or occasionally would end up in Brookings from Toronto. So, and then the nursing home in Clear Lake actually just closed last year, I want to say.
Mhm.
So that was a pretty big blow for the community up there to have to relocate all of those folks who, they've probably been in Jewel County. My grandmother's been in Jewel County most of her life, and now she ended up at the nursing home in Esteline. So,
And yeah, and that is hard when, like you said, it's where it's their family home. It's where when their feet touch the ground, they know they're home, and
mhm.
it's where they're
I can't tell if I'm on the live or if Jenny's on the live, but if you can hear me, she froze on her side. Hi. I just was talking a little bit. I was like, do you think they can see Jenny or do you think they can see me?
I think they can see you. I think they can
I was
see
about
you.
ready to pick up my computer and show them my dog. I'm like,
Yeah. Here's my dog. Yeah. Okay. So that's the thing about South Dakota. Sometimes a big gust of wind will go and your internet's gone.
yeah, yep.
But
Makes
yeah,
working remotely
traveling and
really
not
fun.
being able to go see the elders in our families has been, and it's a sweeping thing in South Dakota right now.
Yeah,
It's
it really is.
nursing home after nursing home. Do you think that knowing things like that and knowing how different it can be in areas like that, has that been an asset to you in working in different types of healthcare? Do you have a greater understanding or empathy when people come in and they're like, do you know how hard it is for me to get to my appointment?
Absolutely. Well, and I think about so I just broke my leg last fall and I ended up having surgery. And so I had bills coming in from Orthopedic Institute, then also the Sioux Falls Surgical, then also the anesthesiologist, even though he was at the surgery at Sioux Falls specialty, then that's a separate bill, which is a separate bill from this other thing, which is a separate bill from my appointments. And, then there's co-insurance, deductible, copay. And I had worked front desk at a chiropractor's office, so I have a little bit of experience like with EOBs or the explanation of benefits. I have a college degree. English is my first language. I have access to computers and a phone, so I can call and be like, "Hey, I don't understand this charge." Like I have every possible privilege in this situation, and it's still a nightmare to navigate.
Right.
I've spoken to somebody at Orthopedic Institute. I'm talking to two people. I've spoken with two people at Orthopedic Institute, and I was like, this is super inefficient. She's like, we know, like we're. And I was like, okay,
Right.
just so we're on the same page. I was like, I'd like to pay you, but I'm not quite sure how. Yeah, so I think that the billing, the coding, how things are coded when you call, you can call and say like, what's the code for this? And you get one answer, and then somebody else calls and they're like, what's the code for this? And you get a different answer. And so then as on the clinic side, you're just billing and hoping for reimbursement.
Right. Right.
And so I was part of the effort to expand Medicaid in South Dakota, which has been a tremendous victory last fall. And now looking toward, anyone has done anything with the South Dakota legislature knows it's two separate things. The part where you pass the thing and the part where you implement the thing. And implementation is a whole beast in and of itself, and how we're going to make sure that folks know that they may be eligible. How do we get in touch with those folks? And then the making sure that they understand, okay, so now that you qualify for Medicaid, here's what that gets you. Here's your primary care that maybe you've been putting off. There's dental, there's there might not be dental. Don't quote me on that. But there are so many things that you may now have access to with the passage of this legislation and once it gets implemented. So it's exciting. Right. It's going to be a lot of work for everybody, but.
And I hope there's a lot of young and young-ish people that are willing. I know we tend to be more generationally separate from the different groups. I hate that that's happened in South Dakota. I always felt like I grew up knowing my grandparents and my parents and my cousins and my second cousins. My kiddo grew up knowing great grandparents, knowing them well and going back and forth. And I think the way the world is, that's happening less and less for younger generations. They're like, yeah, I get a birthday card or I see grandma at that time, but I'm not close with them. I do hope though some of the younger technologically savvy kids are like, I should reach out and help my grandparents or even parents check out if they're eligible for this and what services they can be eligible for. And any kid that says why I don't care, that's their deal, I just remind them, well, that's your inheritance. If something happens to them, their life savings is gone to pay the bill. So if you want to maybe have anything, you and your parents should check if you're eligible.
Yeah, absolutely. So, well, and it's it can be really life-changing for some folks to have access to that. We also the open enrollment period just ended. It started in November and ended January 15. And I have coworkers that their full-time job is to help folks sign up for health insurance. And, I got to go speak to Startup Sioux Falls and say, like, listen, as entrepreneurs, you're out here, you want every dollar to sink into your business. Here is how to keep yourself safe. Like, if
Right.
you're injured, um, are a hairstylist and you want to be in the roller derby. Like, if you're injured, that's your livelihood.
If
Like,
you're somebody that wants to live in a house with stairs and you break your
that's
leg,
what I'm, if my job required feet, thankfully I work remotely,
right.
and I was able to sit on the couch for 8 weeks. But yeah, I was like, take advantage of the marketplace. Like, go out there, see what's available to you. It's really, there are a lot of, but it's one of those things that's difficult to navigate, that maybe it's like, oh, it's going to be so much work, I'm just going to put it off and put it off. I'm a big fan of that um philosophy. And
That's why I don't
yes,
have any clean dishes.
you're like, there's always another dish, it's fine,
It's too
it's
much
totally
work.
fine.
It's too much work. And I don't have dogs anymore. When I used to have 5 pit bulls, the
Hmm.
pre-cleaning was easy. My cats are less into they don't want to do the dishes for me. The dogs were always going to help, whether you
Just
wanted them to or not.
so much support just right next to you.
Right. Uh, you you find the same struggles with living in Sioux Falls in a more urban? I mean, we're the Silicon Prairie. There's a lot of technologically savvy even adults. I am getting less and less savvy. I am more and more dependent on my child. Um, that's why I had her. My parents had me to change the channel on the TV,
Yep.
on the big
Yep.
TV. And then I had her to help me find the cute boys on TikTok. And do you find though that there's still struggles with even people that are savvy like that? They're like, but healthcare, nah, can't even figure that out. Can't even deal. Too scary.
I think so. And I think it's easier to say, like, oh, the system's broken. Or I looked once and it was outrageously expensive. And it was, from when the ACA went into effect in 2011, uh, it was amazing. I had the most incredible insurance. It cost me $36 a month. I had a $500 deductible. Everything was covered after that. Like, the most amazing. And then, as different administrations have chipped away and it's become this negotiating piece and it's just been this wedge issue, it did get more expensive and you did end up with fewer and fewer options. We used to have Dakota Care, and then we had Blue Cross Blue Shield, and then Blue Cross Blue Shield is now only in West River. And so when you have fewer options, the price goes up. But now, like, between like the COVID dollars, the Inflation Reduction Act, the ARPA, I can't remember what that stands for. The subsidies have really grown, and but that's the thing, you have to check every year, and people are, you have one bad experience and you're like, screw it, I'm not going to do it, I'm just going to roll the dice. I'm healthy, and let me tell you, I'm fairly healthy, and I still fell down the stairs in my
Yeah.
own home where I have lived for 15 years. Like, they didn't surprise me. They weren't
Yeah.
new stairs.
Who put these in last night?
And, like you were talking about the weather earlier, it's icy. I mean, anybody can
Yes.
slip and fall on the ice.
Yes.
And that's through no fault of your own. And then you're stuck with
Exactly.
um
And I know,
those
as
medical
somebody
bills.
who's got a healthcare background myself, like when COVID hit, the first thing I did as soon as that fall, it was insurance time, I added to my insurance. I increased my life insurance. I've lived with a chronic immune system illness for 24 years now, and I'm like, I'm one of the people that if I get this, I will bankrupt my entire family for
Mhm.
generations, and then I'll die.
Right.
Still, like, both of these things will happen, and so I was one of the people that was like, I'm going to have to spend more money now because I don't want my child to be shackled with this, and a funeral, which, I mean, the cheapest bare bones funeral during COVID, when you couldn't even have a service, I mean, the minimum was $16,000. And that's who was ready for that. And it was just like crazy, crazy, crazy. And now I do think there are more people that are, their eyes are open to that. Something could happen totally out of your control, but boy, it's still a lot of work.
Yeah. Well, absolutely.
Yeah. I've never wanted to run away to Canada, except for I realized, like, man, they've got unlimited maple syrup and free healthcare. Damn.
And all nude strip clubs. So,
Well, any strip club can be all nude until somebody tells.
true. I was going to say all nude and with alcohol. That was my first strip club, was Canada. We took Bear in the Big Blue House to Canada. So
Okay.
when in Windsor, we hit the strip club.
Oh, that's an off-camera story I will ask. What do you see as, we are a state where our number one and number two, and they battle for dominance, for industry, is tourism and ag. And
Mm-hmm.
what do you see now that you think in 5 years we should be improving upon, as somebody who's been around more of the state? Do you think that I personally feel like we've given enough push to ag, like, or I mean, I'm sorry, enough push to tourism? We've put enough dollars into advertising South Dakota as a state to visit. I personally wish that we were advertising more as a state to buy your agricultural products from. What do you think? What do you
Interesting.
think we should be promoting?
I actually worked in tourism for several years, as you know. So I know more about tourism than I do about ag. The thing that's interesting about tourism, though, is we spend a lot of money promoting South Dakota. Come and visit. You know, the Black Hills, you know, gets all the attention, and then East River is like the
Oh, you'll
sad.
drive through there on your way.
It's fine. You know, there's the falls, and you can look at them. They're pretty, whatever. But you know, like Yankton has things to offer, and Mitchell has
Yeah.
things to offer, and so you know, like East River is really battling for their own supremacy. But the problem is they're workers. Like the Black Hills struggles with workforce, and and that's federal legislation. That's the J1 visas. That's the like, oh, we can't let folks in because they're stealing our jobs. Well, actually, like there's only so many people who live in Lead, and there's not
Exactly.
enough folks who live in Lead and Deadwood who can be housekeepers and groundskeepers and custodial and front desk and
And there's not
um,
enough for all those people to do when there's, oh, what did they get? 15 inches of snow in like 3 hours. There's not enough during that season when we close down that part of our tourism. What are those people going to do all winter? Because then you'll just complain they're on unemployment.
they
And where are they
with
going to live?
their temporary visas,
Yeah,
so they don't stay the whole time. they're
exactly.
they're
Exactly.
able to come in. And so, but if you don't allow temporary visas anymore, then you don't have you have way more jobs. And my parents travel quite a bit now in their retirement, and they love the hills, and they're like, yeah, we went to this restaurant in Deadwood that we love, and half of it was shut down because there was no
Right.
workers. And I was like, yeah, like call Senator Rounds
Yeah.
and ask like why you can't go to your favorite restaurant because we don't have the workforce available.
Right.
So that's what I would like to see is we promote the tourism, but we need to be able to have the workers
We
to,
need to
because
support
there's also
tourism.
like the zip lining, I think in Keystone, you
Mhm.
know, like everybody's crouching back on. You used to be the shoulder season was a huge boon. People like, okay, we have this terrible winter. The minute I can get out, like I am going. And but things can't open early and they can't stay open late because you don't have the kids aren't out of school yet, the teachers aren't out of school yet.
Right.
Um,
Yeah, and we can't provide housing, affordable housing year
mhm,
round. And
huge.
a winter life for anybody to, when they say don't steal our jobs, well, who are the residents that are going to wait for those jobs to come back? That's where you get seasonal workers that come, and they're part of the Visit South Dakota,
For
and
sure.
they
Absolutely.
bring new languages and new faces and new experience to us that way. And yeah, I know, I like Wall Drug was is a whole different place now than it was 3 years ago, 5 years ago.
Yeah,
And a
definitely.
lot of people keep saying, well, and this is the truth, that the pandemic caused this, or that people are lazy. Neither one of those things is the actual truth.
Oh, no. The
So,
pandemic did not slow down West River at all.
right,
Because I still have friends who work out in tourism out there, and it was
right.
they were busy.
I do know there was some times where people that would have come here to work and then gone home to their home country because of travel restrictions, they couldn't
Sure.
come here. So there was some lesser of that, but also, yeah, and then 3 million Americans have died. Like there's not,
Also that. Yeah.
none of those people can punch a clock.
Well, and I mean, when you talk about barriers to employment, childcare is the lack of childcare, the lack of consistent and affordable childcare. Well, I
Mhm.
can't go and work a shift if there's no one
Right,
to watch my kid, my multiple kids.
right, right. And safe
Why everyone should just have
childcare.
dogs. What?
That's why you just have dogs.
That's why everyone should just have dogs.
Yes. But everybody should have at least either one biological human child, or one adopted human child, or one human child by proxy. Like, I have several friends that are like, Casey's our god baby, because like I said, they can help you find the cute people on TikTok. Like,
Yes,
everybody
I
should have a child by proxy that they raise and nurture and don't have to wake up at 2 a.m. to feed, but they can help them in their old age.
yes, I have that. Actually, I call her my bonus niece for lack of a better um title. And she recently turned 21. Um
So now
but
she
when
can
she
drive you
was
to the bar and keep an eye
totally
on you there.
totally, yeah.
Mhm.
And she goes to school here. So that was actually really great for me that she's been in Sioux Falls the last couple years. And but yeah, I lived with her and her mom, and also her actual aunt, when she was like 3 years old to 6 years old. And so like that was our little village that
Yes.
we had, because that's you make up your own family, and that
Mhm.
was the four of us for a while in Brookings. And then it's so odd that she got older and yet I haven't aged. I haven't quite figured that out. It's so bizarre.
Exactly.
But then like she came back to Sioux Falls as this like fully formed human and person, and I was like, oh, and yet I still feel 26. That's
Exactly. And look it. You are one of my ageless friends too. I'm like, Carmen looks exactly the same. Like, not, you just totally ageless. I have a list of you ageless bastards. That I'm like,
I mean,
that I
that's not I've been on worse lists, I'm sure.
yeah, that I look at and I'm like, I don't know what kind of serum they're using. I'm just over here rubbing Taco John's on my face and hoping for the best.
Yeah. Mhm.
I forget that my kid has aged. She was just with me at Snow Jam on Thursday for the opening ceremony, and I forget who I've introduced her to. And she's been coming with me for entertainment things and show things since she was itty bitty tiny. The kid could produce and direct a show on her own. She doesn't want to perform anymore, but I'm like introducing her to people. I'm like, this is my kiddo. I made this, and they're like, yeah, we know. We've been meeting her for a while. And or people that say, "Oh my god, the way you talk about her, I thought that your kid was little." And
How
I'm
old
like,
is she now?
23.
Yeah.
She's a fully formed human. Yeah, she lives her own
Yeah.
life. Yeah, she's
Bizarre. So
yeah.
bizarre.
It's
I
just
feel the
like,
same way about Thea's daughter too.
yeah, like when she
I was
talks
like,
about Maddie, what do you
what?
mean Maddie even went to college, let alone be done with it and have like a jet setting career where she's officed out of LA and sometimes lives in Chicago and sometimes lives in the cities. I'm like, the fuck? Maddie
Yeah, it's
doesn't have a learner's permit. How is she doing
it's
this?
very bizarre.
Yeah.
I keep up a little bit because Tim is responsible for my house.
Yeah.
I mean, I pay him for that, but he's been taking care of my house probably longer than I have actually. So I have a little Tim list, and then when the list gets long enough, I was like, "Could you come?" And then right after I broke my leg, I was like, "Hey, I can't do
I need
anything."
I need a wheelchair accessible front step.
I was like, "Could you just like put all of my outside stuff in my garage because it's gonna snow before I can walk again? And also, could you do this? And also, could you do this?" And
Yeah.
he came and took care of me.
Yeah. That's more of the family you build, you know.
Yes. Yeah.
I have very close biological family here, but I also have my family I've built. So, and that's I do think that's a true South Dakota thing that is still held up, is that we do develop a sense of family easier than people do in probably some other places.
Hmm. Hmm.
So, yeah, I think that's great. I think what are you doing any let's talk a little bit about social media since you're one of my social media friends. Are you doing
Yeah.
any podcasting, blogcasting that you feel like the greater wider world should hear about?
Well, I did start a podcast during COVID with my best friend. We talked about it for years, and it was a way really for us to stay connected to each other.
Mhm.
And then and then I'm really grateful that because I was like, man, COVID was so wild. Like 2020, in addition to COVID, was George Floyd, and then my friends live in Minneapolis, and then there was also
Mhm.
this, and then there was also this, and then there was an election, and yeah, oh my god, it was insane. And I was like, I wish I would have like journaled more, or at least written things down to the point where you could look back and be like, oh my god, that really did happen. And then I remembered that I did podcasts like 2 hours a week. Every week for at
Right.
least a year. So I will tell you it's called Our Point. Maybe Our Point with Zach and Carmen. The episodes have definitely slowed down. We did just do a year end review, but you can go back and listen to any of the episodes. We're pretty funny. As everyone who has a podcast thinks they're funny. That's right where I am. But we kind of talk through current events and what we have going on. I also recently joined the board for Immunize South Dakota, and it started as like a small coalition of people who are really concerned about vaccine legislation, and kind of peeling back this all of these parameters that we had in place for vaccines and living healthy lifestyles and disease preventable diseases. And it has grown into a statewide organization. They got a staff member. They have executive director last year, and so I'm really very excited about that group and the different things that we're able to do. There's a parent-led group called South Dakota Families for Vaccines that recently launched. That's kind of like a sister organization. Um, in addition to the Fuller group, but it's the mission of the vision of the organization is to end suffering from preventable diseases through vaccination. And there's a woman who I've seen speak, and that's really when I got involved. She and her husband had been vaccinated at work. Her two older kids had been vaccinated at school, but they had a little who was like 2, 3, and they, like, oh, we got to put it off, or oh, we'll do it next time, or whatever. And
They're safe because we're their world and we're
well,
vaccinated.
they had planned on getting her vaccinated. It was just one of those things that you put
Mhm.
off because it's the holidays and whatever. And they lost their little girl to the flu. And when we talk about ending suffering, like someone else on our group has polio
Mhm.
and is in a wheelchair and lives every day, and he's a vaccine advocate and a polio advocate, and those are things that we can prevent. And there are folks out there that are choosing to not do that, to not prevent chickenpox and to not prevent measles. And I feel really strongly about vaccine advocacy. So that's where I am these days, as in my free time and on my free time.
I know I am again because I'm immune suppressed and so I was exceptionally concerned about it. I'm COVID vaccinated 5 times, and I'm already going, am I due for another one? And like with a little bit of an edge of excitement. And as of right now, with the bivalent booster, you know, as of right now, we're hoping that that gets people a year instead of just 4 months or 6 months or
Right.
whatever. And even my coworkers are like, "You are so freaking gung ho. Simmer down."
Oh yeah, no, like
Simmer down.
back me up. Like, let's
I
do
know.
this.
When they said that monkeypox had hit America, I came in and I'm like, "Can I get a monkeypox vaccine?" And the guy in Hy-Vee was like, oranges. I don't know what. Like, do you have the vaccine for that? And they're like, "Do you have exposure?" I'm like, "No, but I just shoot me up. Let's get it
Well,
done."
let's do this.
Yeah.
Well, that's what I did. You know, we right now for Immunize South Dakota, we have a big project going on promoting HPV vaccines
For
to
boys. I hope you're promoting for also boys.
yes, but so we're promoting it to providers and because it's 2 shots before 10 years old, so 2 by 10, and saying like, okay, you know, have these conversations with your patients. Here's the reasoning why. Yes, also boys. Because I was over 26 when Gardasil came out, and I still went to my doctor and was like, let's do this. And he was like, you are old. You are too old for this. And he was like, I'm happy to give it to you, but you have to pay for it. So I paid out of pocket for 3 shots because I was like, this is really important. I would like to not like, you can prevent cancer, like some cancers. Why are we all not doing this? So I was like, shoot me up. Let's do it.
Exactly. Yeah, I know. I had to show my vaccination record for employment, and they were like, "Did you know that there's no record of your second MMR?" And I said, "Well, I had to have gotten it. I mean, because I like went to school and stuff. It just must not have gotten transmitted on my record over time." And they're like, "Well, yeah, you have 2 choices because you have to have it. You can get titered and see if you're okay, or you can just get revaccinated." And I said, "So you can either stick me once and maybe it's fine, or you can stick me twice." Well, then just give me the vaccine.
Let's just do that. Yeah.
You can take my blood to titer me and then still maybe have to vaccinate me, or you can just vaccinate me. Just do that. And so, yeah, I was like, roll up my sleeve. And
I feel like I'm probably one of the few people that it's like, oh, 2 more years until I have to re-up my tetanus. Like, don't forget.
Yeah. Yeah. Don't be waiting till you step on the rusty nail.
That's what I'm saying.
Because then it's an ER visit and you might not have your healthcare set up.
Well, I mean, what I have my ER copay is like $500. Mm-hmm. So, and what's a tetanus shot cost? Not $500.
Probably nothing if you have any insurance at all. They most insurances cover it 100%.
Yep. See?
So, and that's something else that I would like to see.
This is a fiscal responsibility podcast. I mean, that's what this is.
Like, what free stuff can you get? It's like extreme couponing healthcare edition.
Exactly.
What free stuff can you get? Well, Carmen, I thank you. I always promise people that I'll only keep them an hour because I could talk to people for days.
Well, I was going to say, and because we haven't seen each other, I mean.
Yeah, you survived the plague.
So far.
Yeah. Till we get a new one. I don't know.
Yeah. It's only a matter of time.
Right. Well, thank you for.
I was going to say, thank you so much for having me. This was fantastic.
Yes. And I want you to go forth and find other people in Dual County and have them watch this and go, what the heck does Carmen know? And
she hasn't been here since 1997.
She didn't even know the cowboy came down. Good Lord. We need to get on there and talk about the real world. And then, I want to, there are 66 counties. I want to talk to somebody from every county. My goal when I started this was like, I want to talk to a hairstylist, a bartender, a mechanic, a farmer, a teacher, and like a firefighter from every county, just to like all the different ordinary jobs. It would be easy for me to say, I'll just reach out to a politician in every county. They'll talk to me. They have platforms. I don't care about that. I will talk to a politician, but I won't talk to politics about them. So 2 have turned me down. Once I said, we're not going to talk politics. They're like, oh, I said, we're going to talk about grocery stores and whether or not there's print newspaper, and they're like, yeah.
Clear Lake does have a weekly newspaper.
There we go. And they print
Yep.
a printed one?
Printed one.
Nice.
Clear Lake
Nice.
Courier. Yep.
There we go. So
I will
yeah,
tell you, if I still have 5 more minutes for my hour. So my dad's family is from Hardin County, which is the tippy top
they
north.
might be the only ones there.
It's so, so what made me think of it was they also have a newspaper that my parents get, a printed newspaper they subscribe to and they get in the mail.
And they stay in touch with Hardin County.
They stay in touch. My dad has my grandparents homesteaded out there. And I think, yeah, that's right. Yeah, they keep in touch. They'll go out. They have a rodeo out there, so they've been out to see that. And when I was 6,
that's
when I
a
was
wide
6,
space county where like the
huge.
people live in a cluster and there's a lot of empty.
Yeah, I mean, they have like, you almost need like host families for school because folks live so far out. When I was 16, we took my grandmother and our family, and we went and drove out and visited like her cousin and her sister, and went to the Sturgis motorcycle rally and kind of did up north up there. So not been back since I was 16, but I have seen some of that.
Grandma, we're going to the biker rally.
Yep, come on. We drove through town just to, say we saw it, and it was pretty amazing. 16. There's a lot of skin.
Right. A lot of skin that now, a few years later, you're wondering how'd that skin hold up?
We were not using that much sunscreen in 1996.
No. Now you run into some of those people and you're like, oh, are those chaps? No, that's your skin.
Yep.
Yeah. Oh, awesome. Well, thank you so much, Carmen. I'm going to sign you off.
All right.
Do some PT and rest your leg.
Thank you. Thanks very much.
Oh, it is always fun to talk to somebody I haven't seen in a long time. And I do absolutely relate to when landmarks come down. This is a state where a lot of our landmarks are fiberglass dinosaurs, buffalo, and neon cowboys. And if those come down, then all we have left is natural landmarks, and every hill and valley looks the same if you're not from that area, although they look wildly different to each person that lives there. So now next time I go north, I'm gonna have to make sure I pick up the weekly paper in Gary. I would love to know how many print editions there are of newspapers South Dakota wide. I should get an intern to research that. This would be an unpaid position. If anybody wants to volunteer, email me at 605speaks@gmail.com. If anybody wants to volunteer to talk to me, I do. I want to talk to people from all over the state. I want to talk about whatever's cool. I want to know what your favorite diner is in your county, and what the fair is like, and where the secret hidden swimming holes are. So please reach out to me. There are 52 weeks in this year, and maybe if I can get all the way through the state before the end of 2023. So have a good and happy New Year. Stay healthy. Happy Lunar New Year today. We are recording on Lunar New Year. So happy Lunar New Year. And stay safe, everybody. Get vaccinated.